Vail. This is vailychat.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Okay, I think I'm ready.
Sounded good.
Awesome. Well, you usually expect disasters to look like a movie, right?
Oh, yeah. Always.
There's, a sudden defining moment, a hurricane making landfall, an earthquake shattering the asphalt.
Tsunami siren going off.
Exactly. You see the destruction, the news cameras roll, and the narrative is just instantly clear to everyone watching. It is an undeniable event.
Right. It's right there in your face.
But welcome to the Eagle River Valley in Colorado in May of 2026, because here, for you, the listener, the disaster we're looking at is almost entirely invisible to the naked eye.
Yeah, it's completely quiet.
It really is.
No.
If you were just driving through, looking at the luxury chalets and the pine trees, enjoying the typical Colorado scenery, you wouldn't see it at all.
No, you just think everything's perfectly
Well,
fine.
Today, we are pulling apart some very dense municipal records to show you how a world-famous alpine luxury community navigates a creeping, slow-motion unraveling.
It is the absolute definition of a cascading systemic failure.
Yeah.
You don't get that dramatic Hollywood set piece. You just get a slow, grinding, deeply mathematical realization.
Mm-hmm.
A realization that, the foundational equations of your community just no longer balance.
And we are so glad you are joining us for this deep dive today, because we have an incredible stack of sources to guide you through this invisible landscape.
It's a huge stack today.
Oh, massive. We are looking at granular municipal records from the towns of Vail and Eagle County, the comprehensive 2025 Regional Housing Needs Assessment.
Which is a heavy read, by the way.
Very heavy. Plus, we've got incredibly precise National Weather Service hydrological telemetry and major international newswire reports.
Right.
Our mission today is to use this specific valley as a microcosm, like a high-stakes, real-world laboratory, to understand how a local microeconomy attempts to survive 3 simultaneous, unprecedented shocks.
Which is no small feat.
No, we're talking about a historic environmental crisis, a crippling local housing deficit, and a highly volatile global geopolitical landscape.
It's a lot.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the first shockwave we really need to look at isn't happening in a boardroom or on a global battlefield.
Yeah.
It's happening right in the dirt and the snow.
Or, well, the terrifying lack of it.
Exactly, the lack of snow.
When you analyze the Eagle River Valley, or frankly any mountain community across the American West, you have to understand that the entire ecosystem, the municipal economy, the daily way of life, it's all fundamentally downstream of one single metric, the snowpack.
The snowpack.
In a healthy year, that snowpack acts as a massive, frozen, slow-release reservoir.
Mm-hmm.
It sits high in the alpine tundra and just slowly melts, keeping the rivers flowing, the agricultural irrigation ditches full, and the dense pine forests damp.
Which keeps them resilient through those incredibly hot, dry summer months.
Exactly. But the National Weather Service telemetry data from early May 2026 is it's painting a picture that breaks all historical models.
Yeah, the word terrifying doesn't even quite cover it.
No, it really doesn't.
The data we're looking at officially declares 2026 as the worst snowpack year in Colorado's recorded history.
Ever. Let that sink in.
But the specific data point that made me stop reading and just, stare at the wall.
I know exactly which one you're going to say.
The meltout date. The mid-elevation meltout happened on March 31st.
March 31st.
Just process the mechanics of that for a second.
Well,
The snow was essentially gone from the mid-mountain levels before April even started.
right. To understand the physics of why a March 31st meltdown is so catastrophic, we really have to look at what hydrologists call snow-water equivalent, or SWE.
SWE.
Yeah. It's not just about how deep the snow is, it's about the actual volume of liquid water stored within that frozen matrix.
Right, because powdery snow holds less water than heavy, wet snow.
Exactly. And the Colorado River Basin is currently sitting at less than 50% of its median snow water equivalent.
Wow, less than half.
Less than half. That means the frozen reservoir is more than half empty before the traditional runoff season even begins.
Unbelievable.
And when it melts that early, the ground is often still partially frozen.
Oh, so the water can't even soak in.
Precisely. Instead of that water slowly percolating deep into the soil to provide lasting summer moisture, it just flashes off.
It runs right off.
It runs rapidly over the hard ground directly into the streams, leaving the midsummer soil structurally desiccated.
So it's essentially a flash flood in spring that guarantees a bone-dry summer.
Exactly.
Because the soil never absorbed the moisture, by July, the ground is just crispy. And that leads directly to the statistic in the reports that 97% of the entire state of Colorado is currently classified as being in moderate to severe drought.
97%. It's staggering. The temporal battery of the ecosystem has just been drained months ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
And the immediate, highly visible domino effect of that soil desiccation is wildland fire.
Right.
And we aren't talking about a theoretical threat looming in late August. It is happening right now, in early May.
Which is wild.
Nationally, the sources note that over 22,000 fires have already burned 1.8 million acres.
That's a 20-year high for this exact point in the calendar, isn't it?
It is a 20-year high.
Which fundamentally breaks the traditional municipal calendar. We are seeing local responses kicking in immediately, far earlier than they ever have historically.
Oh, absolutely.
The towns of Gypsum and Eagle Down Valley, they aren't waiting for a state mandate. They are unilaterally enforcing Stage 1 and Stage 2 water restrictions right now.
Which they have to do.
Yeah. And it's not just about keeping lawns green. If you're a local business reliant on that water, let's say you operate one of those massive Colorado rafting companies, you are staring down the barrel of river flows that hydrologists project will be half of their normal volume.
And that is an existential threat to their operating season.
Right, because a raft literally cannot navigate a river channel that has lost 50% of its volume.
Exactly. It just hits bedrock.
Yeah.
So the economic engine of summer recreation stalls before it even starts. But the more pressing issue is how this hydrological collapse forces a massive philosophical and tactical shift in how these communities physically protect their borders from fire.
Right. I found this shift in tactics deeply fascinating in the municipal records. The sources detail the retirement of Vail Fire Chief Mark Novak on May 15th.
Right, after 11 years.
Yeah, an 11-year tenure leading the local department, capping off 42 years in the fire service. And his departure coincides perfectly with a complete paradigm shift in how the region handles wildfires.
It's a total 180.
It used to be that you could let certain backcountry fires burn for ecological benefit, right? Like let nature clear out some of the dead underbrush.
Sure, historically, yes.
But now the region is transitioning from a seasonal firefighting approach to a year-round readiness posture, and it's heavily focused on a doctrine they call initial aggressive attack.
Because you can no longer afford the luxury of letting a fire behave naturally. Because the environment is no longer natural. The fuels, the trees, the brush, the millions of acres of dead beetle-kill pine. They are so critically dry due to that early snowmelt. A simple lightning strike or a discarded cigarette can transition into a catastrophic crown fire in a matter of minutes.
Wait, break down the mechanics of a crown fire for us. Why is that the ultimate nightmare scenario for these fire crews?
Well, a ground fire burns through the grass and low brush, right?
Okay.
Human crews with hand tools and hoses can dig trenches and fight a ground fire. They can manage it.
Right, they can get ahead of it.
Exactly. But a crown fire is when the flames climb up the trunk and ignite the actual canopy of the trees.
Oh, wow.
Once a fire is in the canopy, it generates its own localized weather systems.
Wait, really? It makes its own weather?
Yes. It creates massive updrafts, throwing burning embers miles ahead of the main front.
That's terrifying.
It really is.
Yeah.
Ground crews essentially lose the ability to fight it. They just have to retreat. So the new initial aggressive attack strategy relies entirely on overwhelming and ignition the absolute second it starts.
Keep it on the ground at all costs.
Exactly. Keep it on the ground. But to achieve that, you have to know it started instantly.
Right. And reading through these sources, the technology they're deploying to achieve that instant detection sounds like something pulled straight out of a military science fiction novel.
Oh, it's very sci-fi.
The state is utilizing multi-mission aircraft, or MMA. These are planes equipped with highly advanced infrared sensors flying patterns over the backcountry to spot heat signatures in the timber before a single wisp of smoke is even visible to human spotters.
And what's fascinating here is how they process that data.
Yeah.
They aren't just looking at thermal blobs on a screen. They are feeding that real-time infrared telemetry directly into an advanced behavior modeling program called FireGuard.
FireGuard.
Okay. This system uses artificial intelligence to analyze the exact topography of the mountain, the current wind speeds, the relative humidity, and the fuel density.
So it's crunching all that environmental data.
Right.
Yeah.
And it predicts precisely where that invisible heat signature will move over the next 12 hours.
Wow.
It allows dispatchers to send resources to where the fire will be, not just where it currently is.
That is incredible. And it gets even more granular, right down to the neighborhood level. Look at the gated luxury community of Cordillera in Eagle County.
Yeah, that's a wild example.
They are so acutely aware of this drought-driven threat that their homeowners association has bypassed state resources entirely. They privately deployed 1,100 solar-powered sensors directly onto the trees surrounding their neighborhood.
It's a remarkable deployment of microtechnology. And these aren't just thermometers.
Right.
These sensors are designed to detect microparticles of smoke and the specific volatile organic compounds released by smoldering pine needles.
So they're like chemical sniffers.
Exactly. They essentially create a digital, invisible, early warning perimeter in the forest canopy. If a single tree begins to smolder from a lightning strike, the system alerts the local firehouse before a human could ever smell the smoke.
That's so advanced. And my absolute favorite detail from the municipal records, the town of Edwards is deploying autonomous RC mowers.
The robo-mowers.
The robo-mowers. These are heavy-duty, robotic mowers that look like miniature tanks. They send these drones out onto the steep, rough, incredibly dangerous mountain inclines.
Areas where human crews with weed whackers would easily snap an ankle.
Or suffer heat stroke, yeah. They send them out there to chew up the brush and mechanically reduce the fuel load. This program actually helped the town earn its FireWise USA recognition.
Which is great on paper.
Right. But I have to push back on this logic for a minute.
Go ahead.
We are talking about infrared spy planes, AI predictive models, 1,100 tree-mounted smoke sniffers, and robotic mountain mowers. Using a robotic mower to fight a historic climate-driven drought feels like trying to empty a sinking battleship with a very high-tech teaspoon.
A teaspoon?
It is highly efficient scooping, but it completely ignores the massive hole in the hull. Are we actually making the forest safer, or is all this technology just a psychological pacifier for a community living in a tinderbox?
It's a completely fair critique, and honestly, the reality is a bit dystopian.
Yeah.
You are correct that a robo-mower does not solve the underlying climatic vulnerability. It does not put moisture back into the soil.
Right, the soil is still crispy.
Exactly. However, the reality on the ground is that technology is the absolute only scalable defense when your natural water resources are this depleted.
That makes sense.
You simply do not have the human capital or the water volume to physically buffer these massive wildland-urban interfaces the old-fashioned way. These technologies are force multipliers.
They buy the fire chief time.
Exactly. They buy time.
Right.
They give a severely understaffed emergency response network a fighting chance to either suppress the ignition or, worst case, execute a mass evacuation.
And speaking of human capital, that is the perfect pivot. Because to operate those remote-controlled tank mowers, to enforce those tiered municipal water restrictions, to pilot the multi-mission aircraft, and to physically drive the fire engines,
We need the workforce.
you need human beings. Which brings us to the second massive shockwave hitting this valley. If you need all these people to keep the town from burning down, where exactly are they supposed to live?
Right. That is the defining crisis of the modern mountain resort ecosystem. You can have all the high-tech, solar-powered fire sensors in the world, but if your emergency 911 dispatcher is living in the back of a Subaru because they cannot afford first and last month's rent,
Your system fails.
your municipal system will collapse. And the April 2025 Eagle County Regional Housing Needs Assessment outlines a human infrastructure crunch that is mathematically staggering.
Okay, let's slow down and really look at the hard numbers from that assessment because we can't just gloss over them.
No, the numbers are important.
Over the next 10 years, Eagle County has identified a gross need of 6,375 housing units.
We need to break that mass down because the county divides that need into two very different buckets, and the distinction is critical.
Okay.
First, you have 2,638 units needed just to catch up.
Catch up.
Right. This bucket has nothing to do with future economic growth. This is the bleeding edge of the current existing crisis. This number addresses the immediate shortage today.
People who already live there but are poorly housed.
Exactly. It includes 686 units that are currently severely overcrowded.
Meaning multiple families sharing single-family homes designed for one.
Yes. And it includes a heartbreaking 195 households living in what the county classifies as temporary housing.
Let's translate temporary housing out of government speak for a second.
Yeah, for it.
That means 195 households, often families with children, working full-time jobs in the valley, are actively couch surfing, living long-term in cheap motels, or literally sleeping in their vehicles through sub-zero alpine winters.
It's devastating.
It really is. It means you need over 2,000 units right this second just to get the community's baseline misery index back to zero.
Exactly. And then you have the second bucket. 3,736 additional units are needed just to keep up.
Keep up with what?
Well, this accounts for anticipated job growth in the service and medical sectors, and crucially, the wave of retiring baby boomer workers.
Ah, retirements.
Right. Think about it. When a 65-year-old snowplow driver retires, they often stay in the home they bought 30 years ago.
Sure, they're not moving.
Right. So that removes that unit from the active workforce housing pool, meaning the county has to build a brand new unit for the 25-year-old replacement plow driver.
Oh, wow, I never thought about that. And when you dive into the demographic cross-sections of this assessment, you see a massive structural mismatch between local wages and housing costs.
The huge mismatch.
The report notes that 72% of the total housing need in the county is for rental units. But here is where it gets highly specific.
Yeah, the MI data.
The greatest need for renters is for folks making between 50% and 80% of the area median income, or AMI. I want to ground that acronym for you, the listener. Let's say the AMI for a single person in this county is roughly $80,000.
Okay.
That means the most desperate need is for people making between $40,000 and $64,000 a year.
And in a luxury resort town, a salary of $50,000 is functional poverty.
Exactly. If you are an entry-level nurse, a preschool teacher, or a ski lift mechanic making $55,000, your take-home pay simply cannot compete in a rental market where a basic one-bedroom apartment might command $3,000 a month.
It's mathematically impossible.
You are financially competing against remote working tech executives for the exact same limited square footage. And on the ownership side, the report notes the sweet spot of need is between 100% and 120% AMI.
Essentially, the very people who physically keep the municipal gears turning, they are completely mathematically priced out of both renting and buying.
But wait, let's look at the proposed solutions. Because the development pipeline data reveals the true depth of the hole.
It's grim.
Even if the county manages to successfully build every single unit currently entitled, planned, or under construction, which totals about 1,337 units, the net need still stands at a massive 5,038 units.
5,038 units short.
So, wait, I have to challenge the economics of this.
Okay.
If there is a verified, screaming market demand for 5,038 units, why doesn't the free market just step in and build them?
It's a great question.
Right, because this is an incredibly wealthy county. Developers usually flock to where demand is highest. What is actually stopping the bulldozers from solving this Econ 101 supply and demand problem?
Well, standard free market economics break down in a geographically constrained mountain valley.
Why is that?
First, you have zero cheap land.
Yeah.
You are boxed in by federal forest land and steep topography. So the raw dirt is astronomically expensive.
Okay, so high land cost.
Second, the soft costs. Materials, labor, permitting. They're incredibly high because you have to truck everything up a mountain pass.
Yeah. Logistics.
Right. So if a developer is going to spend $800 a square foot just to build a structure, they mathematically cannot rent it to a teacher for $1,500 a month and make a profit.
They'd be taking a huge loss.
Exactly. The margins only work if they build a $5 million luxury condo. The free market will never, ever solve a workforce housing crisis in a luxury resort because the profit incentive exclusively points toward ultra-high net worth buyers.
Wow. This raises an important question, though. How does a community physically function when the essential workers who serve it are exiled beyond its borders?
Well, you start seeing institutional failure.
Yeah.
It's not just the inconvenience of long commutes, it's the structural collapse of essential civic services.
We actually see that playing out in real time in the neighboring Summit County. The sources detail that the Summit School District is being forced to permanently close Breckenridge Elementary School.
Closing a whole elementary school.
Yeah, in 2027. And they have to consolidate those students into Upper Blue Elementary. And the municipal reports tie this directly to enrollment drops and budget shortfalls.
Right, driven by the fact that young childbearing families simply cannot afford to live within the district boundary.
Exactly. The demographic ripple effect of a housing shortage doesn't just make traffic worse, it literally empties out the elementary schools.
It creates a town of wealthy retirees and transient tourists.
With absolutely no permanent middle class.
And local governments are desperately trying to maneuver around this demographic death spiral. They are pulling every lever they have.
But the local political will is highly fractured.
Extremely fractured. For example, the sources outline the fate of Ballot Initiative 2A in Eagle County.
Oh, yeah, I read about this.
This was a municipal proposal for a 6% excise tax, specifically on short-term rentals.
Yeah.
You know, your Airbnbs, your VRBOs.
Right.
The revenue generated was to be strictly, legally ring-fenced to fund local workforce housing projects.
And it failed.
If it failed.
But it didn't just fail. It failed by a razor-thin margin of exactly 32 votes.
32 votes in a countywide election is essentially a statistical tie.
Yeah.
But legally, it's a defeat.
Yep.
If we analyze the voter psychology there, it perfectly illustrates the intense friction in these towns. On one side, you have property owners and investors who view their real estate as an income-generating asset and aggressively resist any tax that might reduce their booking margins.
Right, because real estate listings pitch these homes as passive income.
Exactly. And on the other side, you have a municipal workforce begging for a mechanism to generate housing capital. The investors won by 32 ballots.
So, denied that tax revenue, we see the county resorting to incredibly aggressive, almost desperate geographic and legal shifts.
Very aggressive.
The county government itself is physically migrating. They are transitioning major county services from their old historic offices out to the brand new Eagle County Commons facility in Edwards.
Right, moving further out.
Why? Because they are forced to chase the westward shift of their own workforce, as local workers keep getting pushed further and further down valley to find slightly cheaper rent.
The government has to literally pack up its offices and move its center of gravity just to remain physically accessible to its own staff and the citizens it serves.
It's crazy. And they are also deploying heavy municipal legal tools. The county commissioners passed a formal resolution to potentially use eminent domain.
Eminent domain.
Yeah, the government's power to seize private property for public use. They're using it to acquire a highly contested half-acre of private land in Edwards just to secure park space.
Which is drastic.
It is. At the state level, the State Land Board is aggressively advancing a major controversial workforce housing proposal at a highway interchange called Dowd Junction. They are fighting a brutal trench warfare battle for every single square inch of developable dirt.
Because the municipal leaders know that solving a 5,000-unit housing deficit requires immense localized capital. And generating that kind of municipal capital requires a booming, uninterrupted, highly profitable tourism economy.
Right. The problem is right now, in May of 2026, that local economic engine is being held hostage by events happening 7,000 miles away.
And I want to clause here for you, the listener, because the sources we are looking at next deal with highly sensitive, extremely volatile, global geopolitical events.
Yes, very important.
We are going to be discussing military blockades, presidential orders, and statements from global religious leaders.
Right.
As always, we want to be explicitly clear. We are entirely neutral and impartial.
Yes, 100%. We're not taking any sides here.
Exactly. We are not here to take political sides, critique foreign policy, or endorse any leader's actions. We are strictly acting as your analytical guides to the data.
Looking objectively at how these macro global headlines mathematically alter the microeconomy of a single Colorado ski town.
Well said.
Thank you. We're looking at the supply chain math, not the politics. And the geopolitical shockwave hitting the globe in May 2026 is mathematically seismic.
It's massive.
According to the international wire reports in our stack, face-to-face ceasefire talks between the United States and Iran, which were actively taking place in Pakistan, have completely collapsed.
Completely broken down.
In immediate response to this diplomatic failure, President Trump has ordered the U.S. Navy to initiate a full physical blockade of all Iranian ports. Furthermore, the reports note he has issued a strict shoot-and-kill order for any naval vessels or proxy boats attempting to lay aquatic mines in the Strait of Hormuz.
And the international blowback to this escalation has been immediate and severe. The wire reports note that Pope Leo XIV has publicly condemned the military conflict during an address from Cameroon. And the Chinese government has issued heavy diplomatic criticism of the naval blockade.
It is a massive multilateral global crisis.
So what does this all mean? How does a naval standoff in the Middle East translate to the daily life of a ski town in the Rocky Mountains?
Right, that's the question.
It means the valley's economic lifeline has been fundamentally structurally compromised. We have to connect the geography of the Strait of Hormuz directly to the runway at the Eagle County Regional Airport.
Okay, let's trace that path.
The Strait of Hormuz is essentially the world's most critical petroleum choke point. Roughly 20% of the globe's entire oil consumption passes through that narrow waterway.
Wow.
When a superpower issues a shoot-and-kill order in that strait, maritime insurance companies immediately refuse to insure commercial oil tankers.
Because the risk is too high.
Exactly. If the tankers can't get insurance, they don't sail. The supply shock is instantaneous.
Wow.
And when crude oil spikes, the price of highly refined aviation fuel skyrockets exponentially.
And a luxury mountain resort is entirely uniquely dependent on aviation. You don't take a Greyhound bus to a $1,500 a night hotel.
No, you don't.
The numbers in the economic impact reports are staggering. The North American Jet Fuel Index is up 82.6% year over year.
82%.
We are looking at wholesale prices hitting between $7.73 and $7.85 per single gallon.
Which is unprecedented.
Let's put that in a corporate perspective to understand the scale. Yeah. United Airlines CEO Scott Kirby publicly projects that if these elevated fuel prices hold through the fiscal year, his airline alone will face $11 billion in extra unbudgeted operating expenses.
$11 billion. And to understand the local impact, you have to understand airline profit margins.
They're thin, right?
Incredibly thin, often in the low single digits. They mathematically cannot simply absorb an $11 billion hit to their balance sheet.
So they pass it on.
Exactly. They must pass that cost directly and immediately to the consumer, which means, according to the sources, airlines are being forced to hike base airfares by roughly 20% across the board.
20% base fare hike.
And they're aggressively raising ancillary fees, particularly checked baggage fees.
And think about the specific profile of the consumer flying into the Eagle County Regional Airport code EGE. You don't fly to Vail for a week with just a small canvas backpack.
Come on.
You are bringing oversized luggage, you are bringing heavy golf clubs, specialized mountain bikes, massive trunks of luxury gear for your Colorado activities.
Right.
When you add a 20% base fare hike to suddenly exorbitant penalty-level baggage fees for heavy sporting equipment, the elasticity of demand snaps.
It breaks.
Suddenly, a luxury fly-in destination becomes prohibitively expensive, not just for the middle class, but even for the upper middle class. A $10,000 family vacation suddenly costs $15,000.
And it threatens the entire foundation of the 2026 summer tourism season. The lifeblood of the town's sales tax economy is literally choking on the global cost of jet fuel.
We are seeing domestic policy attempts to cushion this blow, though they seem remarkably small compared to the scale of the crisis.
Yeah.
The reports indicate President Trump is vowing to temporarily suspend the federal gas tax to offset these energy costs for American consumers.
But the economic experts cited in the sources point out that while a gas tax suspension might save a driver a few dollars at the local pump,
it's just a drop in the bucket.
Exactly. It is essentially a rounding error when dealing with the massive structural price hikes of commercial jet fuel driven by a global naval conflict. It doesn't solve the core logistical bottleneck.
And you can see this global uncertainty bleeding directly into the local mountain economy's metrics. Real estate listings in the mountain towns are slumping.
Nobody wants to buy.
The sources attribute this specific slowdown to a toxic combination. The terrible dry winter we just analyzed, which makes the product look less appealing, combined with the looming macroeconomic uncertainty of this massive energy shock.
Buyers are totally paralyzed.
Even regional ground transit is suffering collateral damage. The busting transit system, which is the crucial network of state-run buses running up and down the I-70 mountain corridor, is currently facing a catastrophic $25 million budgetary shortfall.
So the macro-level view of this community looks incredibly precarious.
It really does.
You have a town ringed by desperately dry, highly flammable forests, struggling under a massive housing deficit that exiles its own firefighters and teachers.
Yeah.
While its primary economic engine of global tourism is stalling out due to a naval blockade on the other side of the planet. If you just look at the spreadsheets and the macro data, it looks like a town waiting for the end.
But, and this is a big but, this is where the narrative shifts.
Thank goodness.
Right. Because if we put the spreadsheets away and look at the micro-level view, how this community actually behaves on a Tuesday, how the locals interact with their environment and each other, you see an incredibly resilient, deeply proactive, and surprisingly vibrant local culture.
That's the pivot. The macro data suggests collapse, but the local behavioral data proves adaptation.
Right.
Because despite all of this interconnected chaos, the town simply pushes forward. In fact, Vail is celebrating its massive 60th anniversary right in the middle of all this drought and economic anxiety.
Which is kind of amazing.
And their municipal strategy for this anniversary is a fascinating study in civic psychology. They know they can no longer rely entirely on winter snow.
Right. The March 31st meltdown proved that.
Exactly. The strategic plan adopted by the town council specifically outlines a permanent pivot toward what they term vibrancy and resiliency.
Okay, what does that mean practically?
They are aggressively diversifying the economy into shoulder season tourism, leaning heavily into arts, culture, and human experiences that don't require precipitation.
It's a brilliant survival mechanism, perfectly disguised as a civic celebration.
Right.
Take the Vail Comedy Festival, for example. The sources note they're hosting it over Memorial Day weekend. Historically, late May is a complete dead zone for mountain tourism.
Oh, yeah. It's affectionately known as mud season.
Mud season. The snow is gone, the trails are too muddy to bike, and the town empties out. But by booking over 20 professional comedians and hosting specialized film screenings, they are engineering a synthetic draw for drive market tourists.
That's really smart.
If people in Denver and the Front Range can't afford a $1,000 plane ticket to a beach because of the jet fuel crisis, the town is giving them a reason to put a tank of gas in their car and drive up the hill for a weekend of stand-up comedy. People searching for what to do in Colorado find this festival and just drive up.
They are also integrating public art into the landscape in a really physical, intentional way.
Right.
The municipal records show they commissioned a former professional snowboarder turned artist named Pat Milbury to install a massive public sculpture at the Golden Peak base area.
The only way down is up.
Yes, that's the title. It's described as this beautiful, geometric, radiant heart installation.
Nice.
On one level, it's a historical nod to the founders of the town. But psychologically, deploying bright, colorful public art during a period of intense environmental and economic stress is a literal, physical manifestation of morale building.
Wow.
It signals to the residents that the town is still investing in beauty, not just survival.
And speaking of survival, they are making highly calculated investments in municipal resiliency at the technological level, too.
Right.
The Vail Public Safety Communications Center, the folks answering the 911 calls, they aren't just sitting back and waiting to be overwhelmed by the fire season.
No, they're being proactive.
The town council records show they are requesting a $51,000 budget appropriation to deeply integrate an artificial intelligence system called Aurelian AI.
This is a perfect example of adapting to the labor shortage we dissected earlier.
How so?
The Aurelian AI software is specifically designed to triage and handle non-emergency administrative calls.
Oh, I see.
If a tourist calls dispatch to ask about parking rules or road closures, the AI handles it seamlessly.
That's brilliant.
This immediately frees up the severely limited pool of human dispatchers to focus entirely on complex, high-stakes emergency situations, like coordinating the multi-mission aircraft and ground crews when a wildfire breaks out.
It's an incredibly smart, targeted adaptation to a systemic vulnerability.
It really is.
But what really caught my eye in the local reporting wasn't the AI or the town council budgets. It was the raw community action.
So volunteers.
Yes, this isn't just top-down government policy dictating how the town survives. Over the first weekend of May, 700 local volunteers physically showed up for the 26th annual highway cleanup.
700 people.
Think about the logistics of that. 700 people giving up their weekend to walk along the shoulders of Interstate 70 and Highway 6. They spent 2 days pulling 10 to 15 tons of physical litter off the asphalt.
And that effort isn't just about making the highway look pretty for the luxury tourists driving in from the airport.
Right.
They are executing that cleanup to protect the highly vulnerable Eagle River watershed.
Wow.
They are pulling microplastics, tire debris, and chemical trash off the banks before the spring thaw can wash all that toxic runoff directly into the community's primary water supply.
That's amazing.
It demonstrates an incredible generational degree of ownership over their local environment.
And they are executing all this community action while enduring massive daily logistical friction. Anyone living in or visiting that valley right now is dealing with crippling infrastructure choke points.
Oh, the traffic alone.
The Colorado Department of Transportation updates show that Glenwood Canyon, the major artery to the west, is strictly restricted to 50% capacity with a heavily enforced 35-mile-per-hour speed limit just to allow crews to perform critical bridge joint repair work.
Which is painful.
On top of that, it's the final agonizing construction season of the West Vail Pass Auxiliary Lanes project to the east. Getting to work, getting to the grocery store, getting to the highway cleanup. Every single movement in the valley is a daily exercise in extreme patience and psychological compartmentalization.
Which brings us to an incredible realization about the culture of these mountain communities.
What's that?
Dealing with failing infrastructure, terrifying weather, and isolation causes immense psychological fatigue. But this community has always had to compartmentalize tragedy and weirdness. They have generational muscle memory for surviving friction.
That generational memory was heavily featured in the local news during this specific week in May.
Yeah, the retrospectives.
There were two incredible retrospective pieces published that perfectly illustrate how this town metabolizes its own history. First, for the 50th anniversary, the survivors of the tragic 1976 Vail gondola crash came forward to share their stories publicly for the first time.
That's heavy.
Reading those accounts is a deeply sobering reminder of the inherent physical risks of building massive steel infrastructure in a remote alpine environment. It reminds you that the town was forged through periods of intense, isolated trauma.
And it contrasts beautifully with the second retrospective piece you found in the archives.
Yes. Alongside the solemn memory of the gondola crash, there was this completely quirky, deeply fascinating look back at the 1986 UFO wave over the Eagle Valley.
I love this story.
40 years ago, hundreds of residents reported seeing massive, silent flying triangles hovering over the mountains in the dead of night.
It's just hanging there.
Today, military historians and aviation experts heavily suspect they were actually witnessing early, classified stealth bomber tests originating out of the Nevada and Utah deserts. Or, perhaps, intense atmospheric light anomalies caused by unique alpine temperature inversions.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the through line of all these seemingly disparate events becomes incredibly clear. From surviving a horrifying mass casualty gondola crash in the 1970s, to looking up at mysterious classified military aircraft in the 1980s, to deploying autonomous robotic mowers to fight climate-driven crown fires in 2026.
Right.
The defining trait of this valley isn't actually luxury.
It's not the wealth.
It isn't extreme wealth, and it isn't pristine powder skiing. Its fundamental defining trait is survival. It's the gritty, stubborn ability of a community to adapt to an incredibly harsh, deeply isolated, and rapidly changing environment.
Wow, what a journey. To recap for you, our listener, we've gone from the extreme macro to the granular micro today.
We really covered a lot of ground.
We started by breaking down the physics of the earliest snowmelt in recorded history, which directly triggered the deployment of high-tech infrared spy planes and autonomous firefighting mowers.
Yep.
We unpacked the crippling mathematics of a 5,000-unit housing deficit that is literally forcing elementary schools to permanently close and the county government to physically relocate to follow its exiled workforce. We navigated a strictly data-driven look at how a naval blockade in the Middle East instantly ripples through the global maritime supply chain, threatening to double commercial jet fuel prices and choke off the Eagle County Airport's entire summer economy.
It's all connected.
And finally, we saw how a local community fights back against all of that gravity with arts festivals, AI dispatchers, and 700 volunteers pulling 15 tons of trash out of their own watershed.
It is a profound, undeniable study in modern interconnectedness.
It really is.
You cannot separate local zoning laws from global energy markets, and you cannot separate the town's economic future from the microscopic moisture content of the alpine soil. It is one massive, complex equation.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and this is the final provocative thought we want to leave you to mull over today.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've spent the last hour talking about all these localized adaptations. The AI routing the 911 calls, the shift toward mud season comedy festivals, the robotic brush mowers.
Right.
But let's extrapolate this timeline out another 20 years.
Uh-oh.
If global travel becomes permanently, structurally too expensive for the middle and upper middle class due to endless geopolitical energy conflicts, and if the vital snowpack continues to vanish year after year due to an irreversibly warming climate, then the fundamental foundational economic model of the luxury ski town is broken.
The math simply stops working. It ceases to exist in its current globally connected form.
Exactly. So could the mountain town of the future be forced by sheer economic gravity to abandon the concept of global tourism entirely?
Wow.
If the jet fuel is simply too expensive for tourists to arrive and the snow is entirely gone by March, do places like Vail and Aspen organically evolve into hyper-local, self-sustaining ecological sanctuaries?
It's a huge paradigm shift.
Do they become closed-loop communities that focus purely on the survival, housing, and well-being of the people who actually physically live there, rather than catering to a rotating cast of the global elite?
It is the ultimate existential question of municipal adaptation. What happens to paradise when the rest of the world can no longer afford to buy a ticket to visit?
Something to seriously mull over the next time you look at a postcard from the mountains or see some beautiful hiking content online. Thank you so much for joining us on this incredibly expansive deep dive today. Keep questioning those invisible connections between the massive global shocks and your daily local reality, and we will catch you next time.